This SOLIDWORKS demo will cover modifying an existing file into another one. So specifically for project 4, first you want to decide what appliance you want to make, whether it's a toaster oven, a Bluetooth speaker, or a blender. It can also be anything of your choice. If it's something different than these three, you will need to provide your own component files, which you can download if you can find them. You'll also want to know the general dimension of the appliance that you intend to make, and I'll provide these numbers to you. But I intend to show as many of these as I can in this demo, as long as it doesn't get too long. You can also start with whichever file you want. You can either start with a griddle from project 2 or the mimicry from project 3. But either way, the process will be the same. So as far as the the modification process goes, what I would do is have your original file open. Make sure that no assemblies are open that reference it. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one. We can open it again later if we need it. I'm going to click on Don't Save. And while this file is open, I'm just going to go File, Save As, and this will be my new file here. So I'm going to call it, this is for project 3, and I'll just call it demo. Now, before I hit save, I'm going to do save as, copy, and open. It doesn't matter if you do save as, but what this does is it will keep both the original file open and this new file open, which is one of the keys or a trick to modifying a file, is having the original one open so you can see what missing links happen. So yeah, this is where it's asking me I want to keep the original document open. So now you can see if I drag this down, I have both the original sandwich press and this new file open. So this is one of the first pieces of advice on modifying a file, especially if it's going to be somewhat drastic, is have the original one open. That way, if errors happen, you can go back to the original and see what that error is pointing to. So this is where the master sketch is important in modifying your file. It's kind of our starting point here. So reminder that you also have this like rebuild bar at the bottom of your tree. And often when I rework a file, I'll drag this up to the top and I'll just start working on it. And so this is, as I mentioned, where it's good to know the overall dimensions of the file. So maybe the first one I'll tackle will be this blender. So it's roughly 7 inches high by about 5 inches square around. So I can come back here and I can just simply modify my master sketch to be 5 inches and 5 inches. Now I'm realizing this is an offset, but that's okay. That's probably good. Maybe it's a bit bigger. And again, you may have to change how your master sketch is set up. So it may be a matter of deleting these and like switching the dimensions to these ones. If you want it. So like that is part of this process is modifying your master sketch as needed. So now I'm going to drag the rebuild bar down to this first extrude, and it is being built in halves, which is ideal. So I'm actually going to edit this here, and I actually don't want it to be a midplane. I want it to go upwards, and we'll have a separate part down here. And like I mentioned, it's about 7 inches tall, so maybe it'll be like 6 inches above, and maybe a new part line down here, or a new part underneath here that will be an inch lower. We don't need this cut extrude thin or this cut anymore, so for now I'm just going to suppress both of them. Now this is what I was talking about before. This is the sometimes you have to add new commands. This one I already had this edited command to add length down here. So I'm going to make this an inch, and I'm going to uncheck the merge result. The reason is I want this to be a part line. It wouldn't hurt to like look at appliances as reference, and I can provide some of these. But if we study this one, we can see that there is a separate part at the bottom. There's a part line right through the middle here, and so that's sort of what is being mimicked in this build. Up next come the fillets. So here we have our first error. right? So this is what, I mean, this is a pretty simple one to solve, but this is why I suggest keeping the other file open, is we can see file 6, we can edit it and see what's missing. I can see that, okay, it's this bottom edge and these vertical edges. I can go back to the demo or the file I'm working on. I can edit this. And now I see that the vertical edges are missing. But also SOLIDWORKS will sometimes help you. It shows this red dotted line that tells you what's missing. And it kind of tells you here missing edge too. This kind of like green, yellow, brown color is sort of an indication of a missing reference. This also happens in a sketch sometimes. So I'm just going to right click on both of these and delete them. And then just select both these vertical edges and check this box. Now, because we want this to be a part line, I want to add some new fillets. So here I'm going to add a new command in the tree. 0.04 is about 1 millimeter. You can judge this by eye. That might be actually a bit big. Maybe you could do like 0.02. But in the render, this will show up like a nice part line right here. We'll learn eventually how to build a proper part line. But for now, that should do the trick. Now, see here we have the next error, right? It's missing an upper body, so I'm actually going to edit this and select this upper body. Oops. Make sure we get both of these. There we go. And now we have an error on this bottom extrude. It's because it's not aligned with anything. I actually don't need this. You could either suppress it or just go ahead and delete it. But that's like a pretty straightforward blender. Now, obviously you need enough detail that the object is recognizable. Right now we basically just have a box with a part line at the bottom. So observing a blender, some things we might want would be like a switch, feet, venting, and of course the sort of blender body at the top, or the pitcher that holds the thing being blended, and sort of like looking at how this interface is between the pitcher and the body. So this is where, you know, it might be helpful, for example, to drag this back up and add a master sketch on the front here. So we have this going about 6 inches tall. But this is where maybe we would start to draw out, you know, this pitcher at the top. I'm actually going to check the dimensions again for the height. Pitcher is about 7.5 inches tall. Keep this at like about 1/4 inch. Maybe I want this to be aligned with this outside sketch here. You know, well, I'll show a different way to put that angle in. We'll leave it like this for now. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it helps to have this like front view master. And what I'm going to do now, because I created this, if I always want this base to go up to the pitcher, what I can do is I can edit this feature again. And now instead of having this be a blind setting, I can tie it to the sketch by picking up to vertex, or what I call an endpoint, and select on that. And so now if I want to change the height, I can do it with the master sketch. At this point, I'll also create a new front plane sketch. So select the front plane and Alt-S, and now I'll copy this front master with convert entities. Didn't want this one. This line copied because it is a solid line. This one did not copy in the front master because it was for construction. But now I'm going to do an extrude. And again, just like our settings, and I'm realizing there will be an issue because of this here, but we'll go with it for now. I'm going to do an extrude up to this surface, and extrude, oops, take a second direction, and an extrude up to this back surface. and I do not want a merge result. The issue I'm talking about is I intended this lip to be all the way around, and that is not the case. But for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to go with it for now. This could always be done with like a cut or something to be taken care of. So I wanted to put a bit of an angle in here. So there's a new command called draft. Draft is important when it comes to molding something. But in this case, I think I just want to use it for I want to use it for sort of like the design of the picture. So what it's asking for is a neutral plane. This is just it's referring to draft, or sorry, to molding. So the neutral plane is like where the part line typically is. But since I'm just using this for design, I'm just going to pick this face, and it's this one that I want to be angled. And depending on flipping this, it'll flip which way the angle goes. You'll notice there's a little arrow here. I'll be honest, I always forget which is which. I think this is the direction it's being pulled. So if the arrow is pointing up, the yellow face will angle to the left from this orientation. So, I mean, the main takeaway is the neutral plane is like a perpendicular face to the one you want to add the angle to. So I think I'm going to click this, and it should angle the way I had it before. But that's pretty extreme. I don't want it to be that much. So I might just knock this down to like 5. But you could like use it as its intended purpose, right? So we have a part line here. I can hide this body, and we can use it to add a bit of draft to this middle body to make it look a bit more real. So here's the neutral plane, it's sort of the part line. The faces to draft would be all of these ones. And again, this is sort of the direction of the mold. So this up will mean that these faces will move out. But again, like I said, if you ever forget, you can always just, you know, let's say it went the wrong way, you can just flip this, and now it's going to go in. Yeah, just adding some details there. So again, draft is not a requirement by any means for this here. I'm realizing that it is nice that this, I didn't intend this, but this command is based off of the bottom face here. So even though it grew with the draft, the sketch grew. So that was like a happy coincidence for my Jenga tower maintaining sort of its design intent there. But yeah, of course, with this mirror, we would want to flip, you know, copy the picture over as well. But yeah, as far as the amount of detail to include, it's just enough for it to be believable in its function. So, you know, we would need the picture. We would also want to have like controls. So maybe I'll take a minute here to build it. You can use the knob and handle from project 2. I think for me, like, I'm going to reference back to my initial source image here and maybe build like a flush knob like this, maybe some buttons like this. And just want to take this opportunity to talk about some detail options. So this is a flat face. It's at an angle. If we take a side view, you can see the angles because, again, we added this draft command. But I'm actually going to build directly on this face and create sketches. And we want to do it after the mirror because it's only on one side. So I'm going to select the face and click on the sketch. Set it to be normal to me. And then I'm just going to drop in a couple buttons in here with this circle command. So if I want the buttons to be the same size, I can select both of these and say equal. Yeah, 1/2 inch seems like a good button size. And yeah, well, that's fine. The knob might be a bit big. Maybe, I forget what we had from project 2, but we'll just set this a bit smaller. I can align them with like a single line here and tell it to be for construction. And then this way, you know, if things are off, you just kind of drag it and drop it back on the line. And now they should all be set up. But so yeah, one of like the details that I think would help is to do an extrude cut. This is kind of giving the buttons and the knob a home. So again, as we progress, we want a little bit more realism. So here now I'm going to create a new sketch on this face. So I'm selecting this face and hitting Alt plus S or going to the Sketch tab and clicking on the Sketch command. And actually what I can do is I can select this previous sketch and say Convert Entities. And now I have the exact same circles in here. This kind of jagged edge is just SolidWorks saving memory by not fully rendering a full circle. So I'm going to select these, tell them to be for construction. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to offset each sketch by roughly like 0.02. That's like a ½ millimeter. This can be to your judgment, depending on the size of your object. Maybe 0.03. I'll take a middle choice, and I'll just do this for each of them, making sure that it's going in the right direction. But actually, really, I should be doing this one at a time. So I'm actually going to delete this one, and first I'm going to build the button. So these are both offset by 0.03. And I'll just extrude them to whatever button height I want. I'm not going to merge results so that when I bring it into KeyShot, it can be a different value. So yeah, and here's where like I might visually look back to my source image. That seems like a bit tall to me. So I'm going to come back here and just change this to like, let's say 0.35. And this is why I like designing in SolidWorks. You can just edit things. This one here, I want this to be flush, again, like the source image. So again, I'm going to select this face and create a sketch on it. You can always, even though the sketch has been sort of consumed by the feature, you can click on the eyeball if you want to see it. Alt plus V for view to turn like the master switch of turning things back on. So I'm going to select this sketch and convert entities and do the same thing I did before, set this to be for construction, offset it, click on the reverse. And this one I want to extrude to be flush, so I'm going to just extrude this 0.2. But again, I don't want to merge result. Some things that we could do with buttons. So here, if we turn this off, we'll see we have these gaps. The dome tool is useful. It adds like it's as described, it adds a dome to it. You can kind of dial in what you want. If you add a fillet on here, it kind of gives it a refined look. I mean, honestly, like you can also reverse the dome. Adding just slight curvature to objects will make them render better. So this will pick up a different kind of lighting effects. So maybe I'm just going to repeat that on this knob as well. Now, because there are different bodies, I have to use separate commands. I could also use like a move body command to copy. If you make a complex button, you can use a move body command to copy it over. Here I need to look back to my source image and just see how this is done. I don't think I want to take the time in this demo to build all of that, but suffice it to say it's something roughly like this. Obviously this isn't all centered, but I'll just do an extrude cut on this face. Because this is because these are two overlapping shapes, I have to select the contours. I'm just going to cut a very shallow cut into here. I'm going to make sure that I'm only cutting into this knob. I'm just trying to do this as quickly as I can. Make this plus shape, set these to be equal, these two to be equal. So I guess I did take the time to build it. Same thing, because it's two overlapping shapes, I have to select the region. It's because these solid lines are intersecting each other. But yeah, so, enough controls for your appliance to be believable. Obviously, we need to address our picture at the top here. One fix for it, quick fix to address this issue that I mentioned before. Is creating a sketch from the side here. Set this to be for construction. I can select all these and mirror them. I forget what these dimensions are. So for now, I'm closing these to make a closed triangle shape. I'm going to do an extrude cut through all. This is kind of a bit of a messier approach. There's definitely a cleaner way to do this if I planned better from the beginning. So here, this is 0.3 away. So I can edit this. I got that with Alt plus M for measure. There's also evaluate here. It's this measure tool. It's how I got from this edge to this edge, that measurement. So now I'm just D for dimension, set this to be 0.3. And there, now we have sort of something a bit closer to what I had initially intended. But yeah, so I'm just going to add some fillets onto the picture here. So I'm just going to select the 4 corners. You know, maybe also this bottom face here, just to be a bit more. Again, it may not hurt if you need to do some sketches or need to review, like look over some things, like review some sample images of appliances. That wouldn't hurt. I'm going to create a quick lid here, so I'm going to create a sketch on this top face. I'm just going to copy the face as is and just extrude it maybe like an inch. Definitely want to make sure that when I do this, I don't merge the result. I uncheck this. And then again, I can just kind of put a fillet on top to terminate this. Just like we treated these edges here, we can do that again. First, I'm going to hide this though, and I'm going to use a shell command to just hollow out this picture. It appears I already have a face selected, so I'm just going to right here, click here and say clear selections. I don't know what face that was. And just do that. And now if I find the shell command, if I click on this, there's a change transparency. And now I can show this cap. I might want to like also fill it like these edges. Now, as far as the amount of detail you go to for project 3, that's up to you. Again, the requirement is enough detail that the object has all the functions it needs to work. So eventually, though, for project 4, we will need to go to further detail. So, you know, the picture would probably come down and into this body here, right? If I just hide this and create a sketch on this top face. Here's again where it's always good to use the master sketch whenever you can. I'm going to select this chain. This was just this offset from the griddle. But yeah, it has a bit of a cavity like this. Again, referencing these files that I can provide, you can start to get a sense for like how it works. The picture kind of sits in the base. So specific to project 3, a cavity like this is not necessary, but the more detail you add, the less work you'll have to do in project 4. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I would say the only thing missing is probably like a power cord in terms of it functioning. Oh, and some venting. So I'm going to build those 2 things in here. The venting would be on both sides, so I'm actually going to just drag this up before the mirror. And again, this is like SOLIDWORKS workflow. You're moving this blue bar constantly, again, with the more complex files you have. I'm going to look back to this, and I think I noticed the venting was on the side. So yeah, here it is. And here we have a big massive switch. I think we can just assume that the knob could take the place of the switch. So I'm going to build some venting on the side to match this. Definitely doesn't hurt to hit save. That's something I always forget to do. And I'm just going to create a sketch on this face. You know, there's different ways to do venting. I would just, if you want a simple way, like I'm going to use this slot command, similar to what was on the other one. Or again, yeah, like looking at your source object. I think, you know, if I jump back to here, there are these slot shapes, or it looks like they use these little dots. So that would be another thing I could do. But I think it helps to keep venting like fairly narrow. I wouldn't have anything bigger than 0.1, just because the bigger this window is, the more visible it will be. I want it centered, so I'm going to connect it to the origin. And what I can do is I can select this slot shape. Oops, I only selected the line. So here I'm just going to drag select, and I'm going to click the linear sketch pattern. I want it to pattern down, so not the x-axis, but the y. I'm going to flip it and set the spacing. And now simply this is just like an extrude cut into the body. And again, you kind of want it deep enough, hopefully, that we can't see all the way through. One way to address that, if there is a view and you're worried about seeing all the way through the object, is to actually like add an angled face. So what that looks like from this view, I'm going to change this to that we can see the inside, is essentially just like extruding, bodies like this. And that way it might look like the venting goes down and in, especially if this is like a shell. Right now this is a solid body. When we get to project 4, we will be shelling this. So adding like these kind of louvers like this will help make it look like you can't see all the way into the object. Now the funny thing is, with all that said, if we go back to this source file, you can see they totally didn't even address that. Like, we can look in here and see the components. But that's not typical. But anyway, for project 3, like just a deep cut is enough for that. And again, I did it before the mirror, so now it's on both sides. I don't have to do that twice anymore. I can change the view back to this. So for the final thing for the chord, I'm just going to take a top plane here. This is where maybe I would use a spline. I can start in the middle. And I just like to pull a chord like way off to the side so that in the render you can fade it away. And this is just setting up a sweep. So here in this front view, I think I started it right on the origin. But actually I want it to come out of the base, so I'm just going to drag this circle down. A chord is probably like 0.15. For reference, like your charging cord for your phone is probably 0.1 inches. So it's probably a bit bigger than that, since it's an appliance. So I'm going to select sweep, click on this, and click on select the train, select the track. You can see that the track is higher than the train, but it's okay because they start in about the same place. I don't want to merge anything, so I'm going to go to Options, uncheck Merge Result, and then check the green check. So here we go. I think we have enough details. The last thing would probably be like a handle for this here, but again, we can use our existing files. So I'm going to bring this into an assembly and take it from there. So I'm in my assembly file. I'm going to select the blender I just built. I'm just going to insert, I have a Lego gear knob in the spirit of the inspiration image, or inspiration start of this. I'm also realizing I forgot to open my handle. So I have it here, or a handle. I guess this is a different one. But yeah, so this is like how I would complete it, is just with mating. So would mate to the picture here. I'll flip it. I think this is one of the confusing things for the handle, right? I want the front plane and this right plane to be mated. So now drag this up. Same here with this knob. I can mate this face to this face and click on the flip so it's on the outside. And maybe I want it to be a slight distance of like 0.25. But yeah, I mean, you may need to make some changes. So, the handle's too big, right? So I can edit this. Oh, I need to save the assembly first. So I'm going to save as. So reminder that you can edit within an assembly. So here I'm going to edit this part. And now here, right, I can take the master sketch, pull it down till it fits on this. But also, right, I can also, if I want to match the design a bit more, here again, S for spline, I can just change this path, I think, or maybe I'm in the master sketch, so this might not work. Let's see if I can just square this out a bit. Yeah, I have to actually edit the sweep sketch here. So I'm going to edit this, delete this out, select this. This might get me in trouble, but might be a good opportunity again to look at how to fix and repair a file. All right, so things broke. Good. So I'm going to open up this handle. Again, where it might be helpful to have multiple things open, but we can see what's going on. So firstly, this cut extrude thin is referencing the wrong sketch. So I'm going to copy over this one. And really, these are all just missing references. It's because the sketch changed. So now I just need to reselect these edges. This is a little, this is not as planned. Ideally, you would have the original handle open as well. If selecting is a bit tricky, you can always like right-click on a body and say isolate, and that hides everything else. So I'm going to go back to this fillet command here. Clear the selection and reselect both of these edges. So now I can click exit isolate and it comes back. So again, I'm just kind of reconnecting these part lines. And you know what, maybe I don't want grip on this one, so I can just suppress these. Mirror these bodies, merge them. Just double check. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So let's look back at the Blender. So again, yeah, you can edit within, within the assembly. To complete this, right, I would probably like extrude this and align it. One other thing you may want to consider is like mounting points. So, I mean, a handle like this on a Blender would probably be, this is somewhat realistic, but I just want to see if I can make a point here. If you recall in project 2, we kind of had bodies crashing into each other. And now because this is a flat face, it makes our life a bit easier. But if this were curved, we would want to have a home for the handle. And so one way to do that is to edit within the assembly. So I'm actually going to edit this part. And the simple thing that I could do is I could just create a sketch on this face. So I'm going to select this face and use my sketch command. Again, I'm in the edit part mode. This is blue, and I see this up here. And you can also see edit component. Now I have a setting turned off, which is on purpose. And if you have my settings, you want to keep it that way. But it's the no external references. And that's because, again, for having a robust Jenga tower, you don't really want a file pointing outside of itself. But because we're here, we can kind of still see the shape of the handle. So what I'm going to do is just, from my view, I'm going to select normal to, or again, Alt-N. And now we kind of see the shape. I can just create a sketch and just copy this sort of by eye of where the handle is. It's not perfect, but this is kind of, again, maybe more like SketchCAD than Final or Formal CAD. I can set both of these to be vertical, or not. It's going to fight with me, apparently. And what we can do here is maybe, if we want to like give the handle a home, so to speak. So again, imagine that this was a curved face. You would want to be creating a new plane to put the sketch on, and this would be an extrude cut for the handle to kind of live within. But in this case, I'm just going to make this point, I'm going to make it an extrude, and instead I want it to be a thin. So I guess I'm kind of building like a bezel into the picture. Now, one thing we could also potentially do, maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, would be to mirror it. So here again, we see where the center is. The only danger with doing features like this in an assembly is you don't want to actually accidentally build the feature into the assembly. You want to make sure you're building it into the part. So again, we have the external relations turned off, so I'm just doing this all by eye. And I'm going to select the city for construction, and I'm simply going to select this all and just mirror it in this sketch tab. And here we can just visually check, does it align with the other part of the handle? It looks like it does. And then now back to features, now I can extrude it. And it's a closed shape, so it wants to do it as a closed form. But in my vision, it's more of like a bezel that's on the side of the picture. Just something really small, merge result, that's cool. If we want to specify the merge, we can make sure it's just going to the picture. And now we have something that we can sort of like drop fillets onto if we wanted. So these are like, this is kind of the level of detail that I'm looking for with Project 3 and that I'm hoping for. I think the simplest way I can put it again is enough detail for it to be realistic in terms of like its function. But in Project 2, it was more of a sketch. I want something a bit more believable here. So now I have this built in. I'm going to exit out of the edit part. Alt-V to hide this. I mean, things that are still missing, I would put fillets on these edges. So I can like open this back up. And you can see here, the bevel is now in the part file. So maybe these fillets are too big. I forget what I had on the bottom. I think I had 0.04. But it's cool. Maybe the lid fillet is taller. I mean, also for realism, the lid would probably have like a lip that comes inside. Right? So if, again, I can right-click on this and say isolate. I can select this face and create a sketch. I can offset the entities here, like 0.2. Extrude this down, like, I don't know, 0.5. We only want it to merge with the lid. So again, just like adding all these like levels of realism that we can. And part of that is through observation. Like I mentioned, one of the things to do here might be to extrude this so it looks like it interfaces with the Lego. I don't want to merge resolve. And I don't even know if that plus is the right size. That would be stuff I would come back and edit. But now we can go back to the assembly. Now, of course, there is another component to all this, which is keyshot. So getting labels and logos and that kind of stuff, labeling the knobs, but that will happen in keyshot. Other things that could be built in here would be like little feet. But yeah, there you have it. It's a long video, so I'm just going to stop here. I maybe was a bit ambitious to think I could do other ones as well. But yeah, I mean, really the most important part of this video was the first 10 minutes of just like, how do you edit an existing file? The rest is like, how much detail do you want to put into here? So I hope that helps. Reach out with questions.